Don't believe this confidence myth. Most people think confidence is something you're born with, or that it comes from how others see you. But the Stoics had a radically different take, and it's one that can change how you approach confidence for good. If you want to build real, unshakable self-confidence, it's not about external validation or pretending you've got everything figured out. It's about something much deeper, something within your control. In today's video, we'll explore how the ancient Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus mastered true confidence. We'll dive into what they knew about embracing vulnerability, reflecting on life's fleeting nature, and building mental resilience through life's toughest challenges. And by the end of this journey, you might just find yourself looking at confidence in a completely new way. Let's get started. Number 1. Redefining confidence. Lessons from Stoicism. When we think of confidence, it's easy to picture bold personalities, people who never seem to doubt themselves, who speak loudly and take control of every situation. That's the image that's constantly fed to us by social media, movies, and TV. But here's where the Stoics come in, with a completely different take. For them, confidence wasn't about being the loudest person in the room or always having the perfect answer. In fact, it wasn't about being perfect at all. To the Stoics, confidence was rooted in understanding oneself and the nature of the world. Epictetus, for instance, was born a slave and later became one of the most well-known Stoic philosophers. He didn't see confidence as some grand external display of dominance. Instead, he believed it came from accepting that while we can't control external events, we can control how we respond to them. That simple but powerful shift is where true confidence begins. It's not about having all the answers, it's about being okay with not having them and still moving forward. Confidence to the Stoics was a quiet assurance that came from within, from knowing that no matter what life throws at you, you have the inner strength to navigate through it. Here you might recall times in your own life when you felt insecure or overwhelmed. Maybe it was a big presentation at work or stepping into an unfamiliar social situation. In those moments, the pressure can feel enormous, like you have to be on or perfect to be considered confident. But what if you didn't have to be perfect? What if confidence didn't require perfection at all? Think about that for a moment. Number 2, the power of internal validation over external praise. Let's take a trip down memory lane. Do you remember being a kid and how good it felt when someone praised you? Maybe it was a teacher telling you that you did a great job on a school project, or a parent beaming with pride after your soccer game. We all crave those moments of validation from others, don't we? As kids, external praise felt like the ultimate reward. It gave us a sense of worth, a little boost of confidence. But as we grow up, we start to realize something important, that external praise, while it feels great in the moment, doesn't last. The applause fades, the awards gather dust, and soon enough, we're left looking for the next compliment, the next pat on the back. It's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. No matter how much water you pour in, it always seems to run dry. This is where Stoicism brings in a profound lesson. The Stoics believed that true confidence comes from within. They were wary of seeking external validation because they knew it could be fleeting and unreliable. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote extensively about this in his personal notes, which we now call meditations. He reminded himself again and again that the opinions of others should never be the source of his self-worth. Instead, he focused on living in accordance with his own values, knowing that if he stayed true to himself, he wouldn't need the approval of others to feel confident. Now, think back to a time when you chased external validation, whether it was through likes on social media, compliments from co-workers, or even the approval of your family. Sure, it felt good at first, but did it last? Or did it leave you wanting more, always needing that next hit of praise to feel secure in who you are? Stoicism encourages us to break that cycle. Instead of relying on others to tell us we're enough, the Stoics remind us that we are the ones who decide our worth. By building internal validation, by recognizing our strengths, living according to our principles, and trusting ourselves, we create a confidence that doesn't fade when the applause stops. Number 3, facing uncertainty. The Stoic path to unshakable confidence. Now let's get to the heart of one of the greatest challenges we all face: uncertainty. If there's one thing that can shake even the most confident among us, it's the unknown. We love certainty, don't we? We crave control, we make plans, and we do our best to predict what's coming next. But life doesn't always play along, does it? The Stoics had a lot to say about this. They knew that life is unpredictable, full of twists and turns we can't foresee. And instead of being shaken by that fact, they embraced it. They called it amor fati, which means love of fate. It's the idea that rather than fearing uncertainty, we should welcome it as part of the natural flow of life. This might sound like a tall order at first. After all, who really loves not knowing what's going to happen next? But think about it. How many times have you tried to control every little detail in life, only to find that things didn't go as planned anyway? It's stressful, isn't it? It leaves you constantly worrying, always bracing for the worst. The Stoics flipped this narrative. Instead of fighting against uncertainty, they found confidence in the one thing they could control: their response to it. This is where the Stoic path to unshakable confidence comes into play. They didn't waste time worrying about things they couldn't control. Instead, they focused on cultivating resilience, knowing that whatever happened, they had the strength to handle it. Marcus Aurelius, who faced wars, plagues, and personal loss, famously said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's a simple truth, but it's also profound. By letting go of the need to control everything and by focusing on what's within our power, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, we can face uncertainty with a calm and quiet confidence. So, here's something for you to think about. What's something in your life right now that feels uncertain? Maybe it's your career, your relationships, or even your health. Instead of trying to predict every possible outcome, how would it feel to let go of that need for control and instead focus on how you're going to respond, no matter what happens? It's an intriguing idea, isn't it, to shift from fearing uncertainty to embracing it as an opportunity for growth. This is what makes Stoic confidence so unique. It's not about being fearless or unshakable in the traditional sense. It's about accepting that life is full of unknowns and knowing that no matter what, you have the strength within to handle it. Number 4, embracing vulnerability and imperfection for genuine growth. Now let's get real for a second. How many of us have tried to hide our vulnerabilities? It's human nature. We live in a world that often teaches us to present the best versions of ourselves, whether on social media or in our everyday lives. We shy away from showing our imperfections because somewhere along the line we've been conditioned to believe that vulnerability is a weakness. But the Stoics, they had a completely different perspective. To the Stoics, embracing vulnerability was a sign of true confidence. They saw it as part of the human experience, something that shouldn't be hidden, but rather accepted as a source of strength. Think about it. When you openly acknowledge your fears, insecurities, and imperfections, you're no longer trying to pretend that you're something you're not. You're being genuine, and that takes guts. It's the kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you really are, warts and all, and being okay with it. Seneca, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about the importance of self-awareness and the folly of chasing perfection. He knew that striving for some unattainable ideal would only lead to frustration and disappointment. Instead, he encouraged people to reflect on their own lives, recognize their imperfections, and use them as stepping stones for growth. Here's where you might recall a time when you felt vulnerable, maybe during a big life transition, like starting a new job or moving to a new city. It's easy to feel like you need to have it all together in those moments, but in reality, it's okay not to. Everyone feels unsure at times, and that's part of being human. Embracing vulnerability isn't about broadcasting your flaws to the world. It's about being honest with yourself. It's about knowing that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of respect, love, or success. The Stoics believed that by facing our vulnerabilities head-on, we grow stronger and more resilient. This kind of self-acceptance is what builds true confidence, not the kind that comes from pretending to have it all figured out, but the kind that allows you to stand firm in who you are, no matter what life throws your way. Number 5, memento mori, how reflecting on mortality builds courage. Now let's talk about something a bit heavier, but stay with me, this one's important. If there's one practice that truly sets the Stoics apart, it's their willingness to reflect on mortality. This might sound a little morbid at first, but hear me out. The Stoics believed that regularly contemplating death, what they called memento mori, wasn't about being pessimistic or gloomy. It was about living fully, with courage, and making the most of every moment. Think back to a time when you were reminded of life's fragility. Maybe you lost someone close to you, or perhaps you had a near miss yourself. In those moments, everything else seems to fall away, and you're left with a deep awareness of how precious life truly is. That's the exact feeling the Stoics wanted to cultivate, not to dwell on death, but to use it as a way to fuel their confidence and courage in the present moment. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor we mentioned earlier, faced constant threats to his life, wars, plagues, personal losses, and yet he regularly reminded himself of his own mortality. In his meditations he wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." It's a powerful reminder that time is fleeting and that we shouldn't waste it on things that don't matter, like worrying about what others think of us or chasing after superficial goals. For the Stoics, reflecting on death wasn't meant to paralyze them with fear. It was meant to free them. When you recognize that life is short, you stop wasting time on things that drain your energy and you start focusing on what really matters. You become more courageous, more willing to take risks, and more confident in the decisions you make because you know that you don't have forever. Now, here's something to consider. How often do you think about the finite nature of life? Most of us try to avoid it because it's uncomfortable. But what if, instead of avoiding it, we embraced it? What if, like the Stoics, we used it as a motivator to live more fully, to be more present, and to approach life with a sense of urgency and purpose? It's an intriguing idea, isn't it? To face the inevitable and use it as a source of strength rather than something to fear. Number 6, strength through adversity, Stoic endurance and mental fortitude. Lastly, let's talk about one of the Stoics' greatest strengths, endurance, the ability to persevere through life's challenges with mental toughness and grace. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with quick fixes, the Stoics remind us that true strength doesn't come from avoiding discomfort. It comes from facing it head-on and emerging stronger on the other side. Think of Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, who famously lost everything when his ship wrecked off the coast of Athens. Instead of wallowing in despair, he used that moment of adversity to start a new chapter in his life. One that led him to develop the very philosophy we're talking about today. This wasn't some miraculous recovery where everything turned out perfectly. It was a long, slow process of rebuilding, but Zeno had the mental fortitude to endure it. The Stoics believed in the power of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This was the practice of mentally preparing for challenges and setbacks before they even happened. It wasn't about becoming pessimistic or expecting the worst. It was about training the mind to remain calm and resilient in the face of adversity. They knew that life would throw curveballs, whether it was the loss of a loved one, a financial hardship, or a health crisis, and they wanted to be ready for it. Think back to a tough time in your life. Maybe you went through a breakup, lost a job, or faced a serious illness. It was probably one of the hardest things you ever had to endure, right? But here's the thing. You endured it. You came out on the other side, maybe a little scarred, but definitely stronger. That's what the Stoics were all about. Recognizing that we have the power to endure more than we think. And with every challenge we face, we build mental and emotional muscles that make us more resilient for whatever comes next. Now, here's where curiosity kicks in. What if we started training our minds the same way we train our bodies? What if, instead of shying away from challenges, we leaned into them, knowing that each one is an opportunity to build strength and endurance? The Stoics believed that by practicing mental resilience, we could face any adversity with confidence, knowing that we are stronger than the challenges we face. As we've journeyed through the wisdom of Stoic philosophy, one thing becomes clear. True confidence isn't about the external image you present to the world, but the internal strength you cultivate. The Stoics teach us that by accepting life's uncertainties, embracing our vulnerabilities, and preparing ourselves mentally for the challenges ahead, we can find a type of confidence that is steady, resilient, and unshaken by the storms of life. If you've made it this far, drop a 100 in the comments. This shows that you're part of the dedicated 0.01% who finish what they start. If you're serious about transforming your life with these timeless lessons, be sure to subscribe to our channel and join us on this path to self-growth.